Hi folks, Sid here, Border Archery. I'm doing a lot of DIY at the moment, but anyway, I've been asked a question, so I thought I would try and answer it. The debate between longbows and recurves, okay, on stability. So let's see if we can answer it. What you'll notice is that most longbows, right, they have the grip like that, which means the fade outs are in front of the pivot. Okay, and the reason for that is because you want, when the bow becomes at bracing height and then to full draw, right, you end up with a longer draw length from there to there, because your arm is only from there to there. All right, so that's your draw length, but the bow has gone from there to there. So if you take a bow which is like that, then the limbs will have to come back further, right, all the way back to achieve the draw length. But that starts to give you problems with stringing the bow. It starts to give you a lot of bend in the limb. So what we started to do was to make the risers reflexed. Okay, so that's where, if we go along again, the reflex deflex bow comes in, right, where the grip is still on the belly side, but you get that design. Now what happens with this one is you end up with a D shape at full draw, at bracing height, which again is a lovely stable shape. Right, now what then happens is you make the bow more reflex deflex, which means at bracing height you end up with a reverse flick in the limb. Now this is where I get a bit surreal, and I'm going to start to talk about fishing rods. Okay, so the standard fishing rod comes along and then dips towards the end with the fish pulling down this way. Okay, so when the fish grabs the bite, now you'll notice all the rings are on the underside. That's because they will pull the rod in a nice shape downwards. So when the fish pulls downwards, the rod will create a bend, and that means that the fisherman who's holding on back here will be okay. So if we were to, we've got two things to play with. One is rod shape and the other one is where the grip is. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some extensions on, right, and I'm going to put the handle down here. Okay, so when the fish bites, then this rod is going to want to try and fall over. So this here would be reflex, rotten pen on plywood, mind. That would be a reflexed grip. Okay, then we've got an inline, and then we've got one where the rod hangs from the bottom, which would be classed as deflex. Okay, so when it dangles down, the rod is below the grip, so the rod will balance with the weight on it nicely. When the grip is below the rod, then the rod will try to rotate whichever way the fish is pulling. Okay, so let's have another kind of rod where again it runs along, right, and then it flicks up at the end, okay? So when the fish bites, this is going to try and twist round, right? It's going to try and rotate round, which is going to transfer the torque back up to the grip. Now, this would be our reflex deflex designs. Well, predominantly not the D here, but these ones here, right? This is where the fishing rod will try and rotate round, okay? So in this case, when the grip is down low, you've got a nasty design. When the grip is up the top, you've got a good design. And when it's in the middle, it's so-so. Okay, so what you'll see with most of the reflex deflex, because the grip, see in this case, sorry, let's go back to the hill style, the fade outs are in front of the pivot, and as soon as you start to make it reflex deflex, the deflex in the grip means the fade outs are more in line with the grip. So you've gone from the hill style where it's down here to here. That's because you've got a problem here. Okay? So the bow will try and torque in your hand. Now, if we go for a recurve. Now, with a recurve, what you've got is you've got the fade outs coming back. Okay? So you've got your fade outs back here, and then you probably have your pivot point there, right? So there's your riser shape, and then the limbs will come out and tip forward. Okay? That means in a fishing rod sense, what you've got is you've got yourself your fishing rod, right, with the fish hanging off. That's going to want to try and torque quite badly, and that torque is going to come back down the rod until it gets to the handle. So what you want to do is you want to have the grip sitting above the rod. You have to have it that way, otherwise it's going to turn absolutely nasty on you. Now, what you'll notice with a lot of the super recurve makers is they're kind of trying to go fast, so they're trying to go with more inline risers. They're trying to go and solve this problem here, right? And that's not what we've been doing, because speed isn't the goal. Smoothness is the goal with stability, okay? So what you do is, in this case, you make the riser more forward, and what that does is it makes it very hard for the bow to torque. Okay, so let's have a look at this. If you're looking down the bow, okay, so you've got your limbs, right? Sorry, you've got your limb pockets. Now, if the limb rotates that way and that way, right, and you've got your grip down through that point there, and there is no twist because you've got your 45-degree carbon in there, right, then the bow will twist round the pivot. Okay? But if you make the bow with more deflex and your pivot is here, it's still going to want to try and rotate round here, but it's going to struggle because the pivot's in front of that location. All right? So that is effectively the same as having the grip above the rod itself to give you the stability. Does that make sense? Have I explained that okay? Yeah? So the bow, when you look at the recurve, right? So your fade outs are here. If you kind of imagine that as a bit of a pivot point where the torque comes down, if the grip is in line with that torque, it's going to make shooting a little bit more difficult. If the grip is in front of that axis, then it's going to get more difficult for the torque to show. If, for example, it's here, then that movement is going to magnify the position. So reflex is bad, deflex is good. Okay, so I tried to do that scenario on a piece of 8x4 ply, and I've tried to explain it in 10 minutes. All right, but anyway, deflex, limb shape. So recurves have the deflex, which makes them more stable and resistant to torque, which is why the longbow debate simply doesn't carry any kudos. If you try and make a longbow with a deflexed riser, it's going to struggle with its limb shape, it's going to struggle with a bracing height, therefore it's going to struggle with stability and energy. The two for a longbow don't go hand in hand. There are reasons, and it's to do with the limb length, which dictates your bracing height. Ask anybody that's tried an ILF longbow as to whether it goes noodly quite easily versus a recurve on a recurve riser, and it's because of the deflex and the limb exit angles. All right, so there you go. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer.